I've come to Chase Field, home of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I'm with their managing general partner, Ken Kendrick, to see one of the most incredible sports card collections of all time. This video is brought to you by CardsHQ.com. On CardsHQ.com, there are thousands of sports cards of all types, from vintage to modern. With fast shipping and new cards added every day, CardsHQ.com is your go-to source to build your collection. Check it out at CardsHQ.com. Ken, I'm so excited about diving into this collection and bringing this to our viewers. This is an unbelievable treat, and I know everybody wants to see the Honus Wagner card. But we're gonna get to that in a few minutes. I wanna start with some of the other incredible cards you have, including Mickey Mantle's rookie card and the greatest copy of it ever to exist, his 1951 Bowman. It's the only PSA 10 ever. Tell me about this incredible card.
The notoriety of Mantle is second to no one. You know, Mantle was clearly a top player, became a legend. I'm old enough that I actually saw Mickey play.
Oh, that's neat.
In person at Yankee Stadium,
that's
so a great memory for me. But having this card, which is the true rookie card, the fact that it's one of one, I'm really thrilled to have it.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. Love the visual appeal of that card, and the fact that it's the only perfect PSA 10 is just absolutely incredible. And if people disagree that this is the greatest Mickey Mantle card of all time, then surely they think that it's the 1952 Topps, which you also have in a PSA 10. Just 3 of this card exist in a PSA 10, and you've got one of the 3. Tell me about that one.
It, from an economic standpoint, is right at the top of the value proposition of any and all cards. It is definitely more valuable than the 51 Bowman, and many thousands of cards went unsold and were returned, and ultimately the Topps company destroyed those cards. And we know that part of any proposition on value is the fewer number of items, the higher the value. This card was one that I bought in a group of cards near 20 years ago. And this would be the most valuable, and the 51 Mantle, the second most valuable of his cards. So obviously I'm very proud to have them.
Yeah, and both in perfect 10 condition.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Seeing both of these cards together is just absolutely jaw-dropping amazing. Just beautiful, beautiful cards. You also have a set of cards here from Babe Ruth. And these are historically significant because these are his, what many consider to be his true rookie card. Tell me about these.
I think all of us older people like myself would always look at Ruth as the greatest baseball player ever, a dramatic game changer. You know, Babe Ruth was hitting 60 home runs when the next guy was hitting 10. No one has ever been that dominant. So these are cool cards, and I'm proud to have them.
Now the difference between these two is the back. It's a different card issue. The front of the cards look identical. The back of the cards has a different
the one has a clean back.
Right.
And obviously the back is an advertisement.
And it's worth noting that these are the highest graded copies.
For the most part, my entire collection of these 50-odd cards are the highest graded examples, either a loan example or one of a very few.
Yeah, it's a constant chase, right?
Oh yeah.
To try to upgrade the collection.
The chase never ends.
Yeah. This next card, some people watching who aren't familiar with the T206 set, they may be a little surprised to see this. Eddie Plank was a Hall of Famer, but maybe doesn't have the same name recognition as...
No, he was not an original Hall of Famer.
Right. A lot of people like to try to build the complete T206 set, and that card is one of the ghost cards that it's just, it's an impossible card to find.
Yeah.
And for you to have the highest graded copy in history is really incredible. What a treat. Speaking of cards that are needed to complete sets, but that are impossible to find, this is the hardest card in 1933 Goudey to find. It's perhaps the first redemption card or of its sort, or the first chase card historically of all time Tell us about this card.
Within the 33 set, the Ruth cards in that set are very, very important.
Sure.
This is certainly as important a card as a Ruth card from that set.
When they released the 1933 Goudey sets, that card was not part of it. So people back in 1933 attempted to put together the complete set of cards, and they all, would find that they could never find that particular card. So people started contacting the manufacturer to try to complete the set.
So his card was not released by design by the company.
Yes.
You had to request it.
You had to request it. But one of those other cards from the 1933 Goudey set that you just mentioned is the iconic Babe Ruth card number 144, bat over the shoulder. Very, very special card. And this is the highest grade of that card. There's only a few that have ever received that grade, none higher. Tell us about this card.
He was P.T. Barnum before the circus, because Babe was not only an on-the-field icon, he was an off-the-field icon. I mean, the legendary stories of his food intake, his adult beverage intake, and all kinds of other things that made him just a larger-than-life character, perhaps still the most important figure ever to wear a uniform.
We're going to get to the Honus Wagner in just a minute. I know everyone wants to hear about this card, but this one's a little unusual.
Yeah.
This is a oversized card, right? A 1911 turkey red Ty Cobb, considered one of the greatest players ever in baseball history.
Well, an original Hall of Famer.
And the only guy in that original Hall of Fame, the guy who got the most votes for that original Hall of Fame.
He did.
Above Babe Ruth.
Ty was, of course, a legendary player. Incredible stories about him, both on the field and off.
These are extremely difficult to find in any type of high grade, much less an 8. And the reason why is because these were larger portrait cards, people would hang them up on their wall. Mm-hmm. These were often...
And therefore they would be defaced.
Yes.
And it would diminish the value.
Yes.
None of us thought about that at the time. My era of collecting, I started my very first year I collected cards was 1952. Lucky for me. A lot of the cards ended up turning your bike into a motorcycle with a clothespin and ruined the cards, or you tossed the card against the wall. All the things you would do to diminish the quality of the card, therefore make it less valuable.
This next card is one of my personal favorite cards. I love the story of Shoeless Joe Jackson. I feel like it transcends baseball. It's a story of, in many ways, a fall from grace for a superstar. It also ties into Cracker Jacks, this particular card, which is part of baseball lore, baseball history. And this is one of only 2 PSA 9s of the 1915 Cracker Jack, Shoeless Joe Jackson. There are no PSA 10s. So this is amongst the greatest cards in existence.
Yeah, and Shoeless Joe was an incredible player and a sad end to his career. I remember this story. He goes back to South Carolina from where he came. You know, he's out of baseball. He doesn't have an ability to play in the majors. But he ended up owning a liquor store. And for some reason, Ty Cobb decides to come to his store. And Jackson doesn't acknowledge him. And Cobb said, "Joe, it's Ty." And Joe says, "Yes, I know Ty." And he said, "Well, why didn't you acknowledge me?" He said, "Because I'm ashamed. I didn't feel like you would want me to acknowledge you." Think about those 2 people and what they meant to baseball and the sad ending of Joe.
Another player with a tragic story in many ways is Lou Gehrig. We've got 2 different Lou Gehrig cards here. These are both from 1934 Goudey. They're just so crisp. You could convince me that these were printed by Goudey yesterday. But in fact, they're from 1934 and they're perfect. Tell me about those cards.
Yeah, probably one of the greatest speeches ever made by a ball player. I think the great line is, "I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth." He was a very fine human being and very sad that he died as a very young man with a horrible disease.
All right, Ken, I think we've reached the point where we need to talk about the Honus Wagner card because it's been sitting here in front of us this whole time, and it is perhaps the single greatest card in the history of sports cards. It has such a legendary story.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful, vibrant copy of the card, the highest ever graded, the first card ever graded by PSA.
Yeah, it's serial number 1.
Serial number 1. Tell us about this card.
The Wagner card always has had a soap opera story. It's well known that this card was actually altered. The card was owned by an elderly couple, a husband and wife, and he passes away. So she is going to throw them away, and someone who worked for them asked if he could have them, and she gave him the cards. And those cards were given to a family member. He had a friend who had a card store. They took photos of themselves with the card before it was ever graded, before it was ever altered. After Mr. Mastro got it, the alteration occurred.
So photos do exist.
The photos do exist.
Wow, pre-altered, wow.
Had this card for a time, and then the Mastro trial occurred, and he admitted in court that he had altered this card. Shortly after that, maybe the next day, David Hall, chairman and founder of PSA, called me, and he said, look, Ken, you know our company motto, so I'm calling to let you know we will offer you the $2.8 million that you recently paid for the card. And I told him I bought it with reasonable knowledge that the card had been altered. And I believe now, and I did when I bought it, that it had a cachet to it associated with wrongdoing. So I figured this being a part of a crime made it more valuable, and time now tells that I probably was right.
It's got the lore to it. All right, Ken, we could talk about that Honus Wagner card for days, but you have so many other incredible cards here. I want to continue to jump into the rest of these, and I'll let my audience know that if you want to find out more about the Honus Wagner card and the history of that card with some incredible stories from Ken, we're doing a special edition episode just about the Honus Wagner card that's going to come out soon with Ken, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's roll into some more of these cards, and I want to next go to the 1948 Leaf Satchel Paige card. Tell me about this.
Of course, he is a true icon. Probably would be known from his life in baseball as the greatest Negro leaguer ever, and came to the major leagues in the late 40s. And I think he was in his late 40s and pitched for the Indians, but it was in the twilight of his long baseball career, but a limited amount of time in MLB. But you know, I think we're all blessed that he got to spend the last part of his baseball life as a true major leaguer.
Another really cool card set was 1941 Play Ball. They brought color to these play ball cards, and the Joe DiMaggio. What a beautiful card.
Yeah, and this is a beauty. I met him in Marina Del Rey, California, where I had gone with my buddies to the Super Bowl. And we were going to meet in the hotel bar, and I go in and turn to my right, and lo and behold, there's Joe DiMaggio. And I didn't really know him, of course, but I did get to share a 10 or 15 minute having a beer with Joe DiMaggio.
That's really fun. This next card, this is an unusual one. This card's got a unique design. T205 gold border Ty Cobb, highest graded ever. Tell us about that.
You know, Cobb was known for his toughness in every way, both in how he played the game and how he dealt with his opponents and how he dealt with the public. Certainly one of the greatest players ever to have played, and one of the first 5 in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, cool. And it's such a cool card design.
Yeah.
It's really kind of a unique one.
Yeah, it's a unique setting of that. There was never another year similar to that.
No, it's such a unique card design. The T205 gold border. Only 3 of these have ever been graded to PSA 8, none higher. This one looks just magnificent.
Yeah.
Really nicely conditioned card. This next card is unusual. Some people might be surprised to see this amongst your top cards. It's a hot dog card. It's a Wilson's Franks card, 1954 Ted Williams, but a really beautiful card to look at.
It is a great card, and that collection was only done 1 year. And to my good fortune, I guess again, my age lets me be able to say some of these things about, I got to see Ted in person.
Neat.
Neighbor family took me and their son, who was my buddy, took us to Boston to see all the sights, you know, all the historic things. When we went to a Red Sox game and we got to see Ted play. So, you know, those kinds of things as a collector, you identify in a way different from those who actually you either met or got to know, or at least got to see actually play the game. And maybe the best hitter ever. Pretty hard to say he wasn't. Just one of the most iconic players of all time, and certainly a wonderful, wonderful ball player.
This next card, the 1954 Topps Hank Aaron, there's only 2 of this card that have ever been graded a PSA 10. One is in the collection of Nat Turner, who we had the opportunity to profile on this show.
Right.
The other is right here in my hand in your collection.
Yeah.
What an incredible
Well, this
card.
is one I'm particularly proud to own for multiple of reasons. I got to know Hank later in life. What you would say if you were around Hank Aaron is he was an elegant gentleman, and just one of those people that you knew you were in the company of somebody very, very special when you were in his company. One of the things I remember about him, when a young African-American player would get to the big leagues, Hank always took it upon himself to spend time with and counsel these young men as to what they were achieving by being major leaguers. And he's just one of those people in life you're proud you got to know as a person. Leave aside his incredible talent as a ball player.
Yeah, incredible. And what an incredible card. What an amazing way to remember.
Yeah, it's a fabulous card, and only 2 of them, and Nat and I have them.
Yeah. This is probably the most important football card of all time, and you have the highest graded copy ever, the only one, of the most important football card of all time. Tell us about that.
I acquired this card because of the Joe Orlando list of the top 20 all-time sports cards, and it was on the list, and was the only football card on the list. And Bronko Nagurski was a legendary player. My mentor in putting a significant number of cards together was Tom Candiotti. He would be defined by me, and I think everything in life you have mentors. In the collectible world, he would be my mentor. But he had a collection of these 50, about 15 of the cards, and he said, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to buy my entire collection. And through a series of give and takes, I bought his collection. Well, once I had those cards, I began to look at where do I go from here. And at that time, Joe Orlando was the president of PSA. And Joe is a legendary figure in the collectible world. And he had Joe Orlando's top 20 cards of all time. And I thought, Ken, you could have all of those cards. You have more than half of them. And if you put some time and energy into them, you can collect them all. And my goal was not only to have them, but have the very highest graded card of each one of them. And there are 2 or 3 of them where there is a card available. And since this is going to be in the public airways, if you own a card that is more highly graded than the one I have, call me and maybe we can make a deal.
Roberto Clemente.
Yeah.
Another unbelievable baseball player, beautiful PSA 9 copy.
I got
of his
to see him
card.
play his last ever game.
Okay, wow.
None of us knew that.
Wow.
Boy, what a player. Pure 5-tool guy all the way. Maybe as great a throwing arm as there ever was for an outfielder. Great hitter, great base runner. I mean, he did it all. My story of this card is, of course, it's a 9, and there is one 10. And I could have had the 10, but fell asleep at an auction and woke up the next morning to find out someone had bought the only Gem Mint 10. This is some years ago, and it's still owned by the guy who bought it, and I ended up with a 9. So,
still haunts you, it seems like.
Well, it is haunting me, obviously.
It gives you something to continue to chase.
So, yeah,
maybe that's the most fun of it.
Look, all of us, I'm later in my life. There's always something more to strive for in life.
Another historic card, this one from basketball, the George Mikan 1948 Bowman, considered to be the first important basketball card of all time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a shame on me story on this one is in the Tom Candiotti collection, he had this Mikan, either a 9 or a 10. It's the sole one. And a dealer said, Ken, I know you're a baseball guy. Would you want to sell your basketball card? And I then later learned that within a few months, the dealer sold the card that I sold him for 5x what he bought it from me from.
Wow.
But it's a very good example of the Mikan, and it fits into the Joe top 20 list.
Yeah, and it's the second highest graded ever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's not...
It's not a bad card.
Still pretty impressive. Speaking of highest graded ever, this 1951 Bowman Willie Mays rookie card, this is the highest graded ever. There's a handful of these 9s. You have one of them.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful, iconic card that is.
I got to see Willie play, and I got to know Willie. And my story on Willie Mays is he was a Diamondback season ticket holder. Willie got a home here because he would come to spring training, and he decided to buy, for the people who occupied his home, season tickets. Willie comes to meet with me, and he wants me to give him the tickets.
Okay.
And but what I got him to do was, I have a couple of signed Willie balls, and in my office there's Ken and Willie with me getting my photo made with Willie. That was the price of free season tickets. He's a very, very special guy.
Yeah, really is, and that's a very, very special card. This next card stands out a little bit in the collection. It's a little different than all of the others. We have so many vintage cards here, but this is our one card from the 1980s, but it's the most significant card from the 1980s. It's the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie card in a perfect PSA 10.
Well, in the time that this guy's career was going, I was involved in the ownership of the Phoenix Suns, and I watched him innumerable times, always to my chagrin. This was a part, again, of the Joe Orlando top 20 all-time sports cards. It's not as unique as most of what I own, but I'm glad I have it.
Yeah. Let's go from a card in the 80s to one quite a bit older. We're going to go back to T206. Cy Young, green background card there.
Of course, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. This one is, I think, the highest graded.
And that's one of the T206 Cy Young cards. And then this is another Cy Young card, T206.
I like the first one better.
You like the first one better? I mean, they're both...
they're both 9s.
Yeah.
And they're both iconic for sure, but if I had to choose and could only have one, I'd choose the first one.
Both striking cards with great color and clarity for being that old. And Walter Johnson, another incredible pitcher from that era.
The Big Train, I believe, was his nickname. I think he was known to be the hardest thrower of his era. He was the big guy.
Yeah, and that's a big card in PSA 9. Incredibly conditioned card right there. We've got another T206. Talk to me about that card.
That's the famous error card. He was really McGee, but this is Maggie.
Right.
Its value was not because of his greatness as a player, but because it was an error card.
We've talked about Ty Cobb a little bit on the show already. This is his T206 Old Mill card. Really nice copy of that card. Beautiful.
Yeah, there are a series of 4 cards. Red back, green back is this one, and then there are 2, bat on shoulder and bat off shoulder, all honoring Cobb, who in that time was the most iconic of all the players. Therefore, 4 cards.
Here's the other Cobb, by the way. We'll show that one. We'll show that one briefly. The red back.
The red back.
And here's one of the other copies.
The two bat on shoulder.
Yeah, we've got the bat off shoulder. And then we've got the bat on shoulder copy. So
yeah, they actually have, it's kind of interesting. Our friends at PSA, they have a registry just for the 4 Cobbs.
We showed the 1915 Cracker Jack Shoeless Joe Jackson earlier in the show. This is the Ty Cobb.
Of course, in that era, Cobb was the guy. So in every collection, witness the T206s, there are 4 Cobbs. If I were ever go to collect another set of cards, this might be the one I'd go for.
The Cracker Jacks, they're cool cards.
Yeah.
And to think those came in Cracker Jack boxes, I mean, it's such a cool history tie-in as well to baseball.
I've eaten a lot of Cracker Jacks in my day.
There you go. Multi-sport athlete Jim Thorpe. Talk to me about this card.
This one doesn't have any resonance in the eyes of many collectors, but to me, he's one of the greatest athletes ever. He was like a Jackie Robinson of his era, multi-talented, played all sports.
Yeah.
But he was a great, and a name as a boy that I always heard about.
All right, Ken, I know you're going to be excited to see this next card because you already said this is maybe your favorite of all of these, the 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson PSA 9. There's no PSA 10s of that. That's one of the few PSA 9s.
This card is my favorite card. He came to the game. I'm a little boy, and I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. One of my most memorable moments as a young boy was the Dodgers winning the World Series in '55. And I got to see it on TV. It was the first year we owned a TV. My most favorite line, none of our lives are important other than in the impact we have on the lives of others. Think what a beautiful statement that is.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, I have several wonderful cards that I love. This one I like the best.
Yeah, unbelievable. Beautiful, beautiful copy of that card
Yeah.
too. This is a unique Babe Ruth card, 1927. Really like the imagery on that card. That's such a cool looking card.
I think this card was from the year that he hit his 60 home runs.
Yeah, yeah.
The 27 Yankees, there are many who would argue, the greatest team ever.
Yeah, and that's an incredible card. Beautiful card, PSA 8 of that one. Speaking of Babe, this is the 1934 Worldwide Gum. Same design as one of the 33 Goudeys, and that is a
and this has got color and
stunning copy of that card.
Yeah, the Goudey of 33 is probably a more iconic set.
They don't have quite the same name recognition as the Goudeys, yet they can often be harder to find and collect. And that's an unbelievably incredible copy of that card in a PSA 9.
So this one is a 9, and I don't know.
I believe that's the highest there is.
Oh, well, good for me.
Yeah, I believe you got that one in the highest. This is unique. We've got two different Joe DiMaggio cards here, both from 1938 Goudey. Just slight difference in the cards. One's got some imagery and some words in the background, the other doesn't. Two different card numbers, but both of them in incredible condition.
This was a little goofy to me.
Right, the design of it, how they did the 38 Goudey.
It wouldn't be my favorite, but Joe DiMaggio was a great player, and these were the most highly graded that I think were out there.
Yep, super, super cool cards. The first year of play ball was 1939, so this is a very important Ted Williams card. Ted Williams, rookie, I believe.
You know, a great American, obviously, for his military service, but if not the best hitter ever, pretty close.
Yeah, what a card of one of the greatest hitters of all time.
Yeah.
In a PSA 9, absolutely incredible. Here is the 1941 play ball Ted Williams. So this one's 2 years later, and that was the first color play ball card. So that was that's also an important card for Ted Williams. Another iconic player from the 1940s.
When I was a Dodger fan, Campy was a MVP, catcher, just a all-world person. You know, and he sadly was in a car accident and was paralyzed and lived the rest of his life in a chair, but could have been maybe the greatest catcher ever. He was a great Dodger.
Yeah, great Dodger.
And he was a great Dodger when I was a Dodger fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dodgers were really good when I was a fan. Now, not so much.
I understand why you say that. We saw the Satchel Paige 1948 Leaf card earlier, talked about him a little bit. That's the 1949 Bowman Satchel Paige. Beautiful card as well. Stands on up there with the 1948 Leaf.
Of course, a Hall of Famer, you know, one of the early former Negro Leaguers to get into the Hall of Fame. And I've had some really fun and memorable experiences being on veterans committees. Paige got in through the Veterans Committee. I was able to be a part of the panel when Buck O'Neill, who was among the most famous spokesperson for the Negro Leagues. Every time I see Paige, I think of O'Neill and many others who have made it to the Hall of Fame. He was something.
Yeah.
This guy was.
Absolutely incredible. All right, we're down to our last handful of cards, but we've got some incredible ones in here, Ken.
All right.
And you've talked about your 1952 top set. You've got the highest graded active complete set out there. This is one of the cards from that. That is the Willie Mays.
I think he was a rookie in '51, and I'm a fan by then. And of course there were the rivalry of the Giants and the Dodgers, and I'm a Dodger fan, and the Giants were the arch rival across town at Polo Grounds. But Willie was the best Giant player, and again, maybe arguably in the top 5 players of all time.
Yeah.
Quite a story and quite a guy.
And quite a card. That
it's a great
1952
card.
tops and a perfect
well, any
PSA
52
10.
is a great card.
And it's a perfect PSA 10, which is absolutely amazing for that
And
card.
I believe it is the only one.
Yeah. And I believe this is the 1953 tops. I believe that's the only one of the 1953
I'm pretty sure
tops in a perfect PSA 10.
Maybe I was a fan of Willie's.
Yeah, I think so. And what a cool card that is. What a great design.
The 53s were an interesting set. The grading has not stood up as well as the 52s because of the edges of the card. And they were a softer cardboard.
Yeah. Let's go to 54 tops the following year. We saw Hank Aaron's rookie earlier, but this is the Al Kaline.
I remember my dad following when Kaline came. He was one of my dad's favorites, arguably among the best Tigers ever.
Yeah. Super cool card. Here's another Ted Williams. We've seen a couple of Ted Williams so far. This is 1954 Bowman, a set that doesn't necessarily get a lot of attention, but it's a really nice looking Ted Williams card.
Yeah, that 54 Bowman set, we just looked at a 54 tops.
Yeah.
If you compare them and say the visuals, which would you prefer? I would prefer the tops over this, but because it was Ted Williams, it was an important card to have. And I was able to get one at very high grade.
Yeah, PSA 9 on that. Absolutely incredible. One of the most iconic tops designs ever was 1955. And Sandy Koufax was one of the most iconic cards in 1955 tops. That is the PSA 10.
Yeah, obviously one of the greatest pitchers ever. Sandy in today's world is maybe the most elegant of retired baseball players. Just a wonderful, wonderful, fine man. Great card.
Incredible card. A gem mint 10, a perfect 10 on that one.
Yeah.
What an unbelievable card.
It's one of my favorites.
I know Brooks Robinson was one of your favorites as well. This is his 1957 Topps PSA 10.
I was fortunate out of college to go to Baltimore when the Orioles won the World Series in 1966. I had the instant transformation from the Dodgers to the Orioles. The Dodgers were in LA. I had long left them behind because they left me behind. And now here I am in Baltimore, we're playing the Dodgers. And we were the little engine that could, as it turned out. We swept the Dodgers. He becomes a board of directors member of the Hall of Fame, and I become a board of directors member. He was one of my favorite people that I ever got to know in baseball.
Neat. And what a cool card to have of his perfect PSA 10 of the 1957 Topps Brooks Robinson rookie card. Unbelievable. Bob Gibson, another baseball legend, 1959 Topps PSA 10, his rookie card. Unbelievable copy of that card.
Yeah, he was, of course, just a killer as a pitcher. I mean, he was dominant. And I think maybe he has, if not the lowest ever season-long ERA, but like 1.1 as a starting pitcher, and of course led the Cardinals to World Championships. One of the all-time greats for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the all-time great cards in PSA 10. Another one of the greatest pitchers of all time, Nolan Ryan. That's his PSA 10 rookie card. Look at that.
Yeah, I know this is a one-up.
Yeah.
I saw Nolan pitch, unfortunately, as a rookie for the Mets against my Orioles, the amazing Mets in 1969.
Yeah.
I think he was more taken for granted than he should have been.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly looked at as a great.
Yeah.
But he might be the greatest right-hand pitcher of all time.
Well, this card cannot be taken for granted because this is the only PSA 10 of his 1968 Topps rookie card.
Yep.
Incredible card to have. We're down to our last couple of cards here, Ken. We've got a 1979 Topps Ozzie Smith PSA 10.
I was called one day by a dealer, and he said, there is an iconic card in 1979. It's the Ozzie rookie. And he said, I think I can get you one at a pretty good price. And I thought, I'm going to get this card, and I'm going to give it to my son for Christmas. So if the truth were known, this card is my son's card that his dad gave him as a Christmas gift that he wanted to be in the book. So he got in the book. But I've gotten to know Ozzie, just a very fine man. I guess he will be my newest of all of my vintage cards.
Our final card, we saved one of the best for last. I know your love for Jackie Robinson. We talked about his 1948 Leaf card. This is Jackie Robinson from 1952 Topps, part of your complete set of 1952 Topps in a PSA 9.
And of course, he was my favorite card and one of my favorite all-time players. My book is here. It published my collection. We opened the vault. All the photos were done for the book, and I forgot to bring this card from the set, and it didn't get in my book. It's the greatest card I owned that didn't get the publicity that it deserves, and it deserves to be there, but it's, of course, Jackie is Jackie. And I've certainly said what I think of him before, and very, very happy that I have the Willie, the Jackie, and the Mickey from that 52 set, all in the highest grade that there is.
Ken, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing this collection with our audience. Before we go, I gotta see that ring on your finger. Is that the World Series ring?
It is.
Man, hopefully you could add another one to it soon.
It's fun to compete, and it's very fun to win.
Well, we'll be rooting for the Diamondbacks this year, Ken. Hope you get another ring for sure. And thank you guys for watching out there. What an episode. Thank you to Ken, and thank you. Please make sure you like the episode and subscribe, and we will see you soon for our next one. Take care.